guys, and welcome to episode 257 of the OCDstories.com podcast. Now, in this episode, I interviewed psychotherapist Stefan Batorijs, and I got Stefan on to talk about ecotherapy and in particular Shinrin Yoku. Two areas that really fascinate me as an individual, and spending time in nature for me personally has been very helpful, very meaningful, and it's something I enjoy and try to do on a weekly basis. So I got him on to unpack Shinrin Yoku, which he'll explain what it is briefly, and ecotherapy. And it's worth me saying that Stefan isn't an OCD specialist. He doesn't work with people with OCD in particular. He works with a wide range of people when he does psychotherapy in nature. But I got him on because I really wanted him to unpack his view on nature and how it can potentially work to heal us and show us insights into ourselves and help us grow as individuals. And Shinrin Yoku as a principle can be a great way, I feel, for us to really connect with nature and get some of those benefits. So in this episode, I asked Stefan about why he became a therapist, specifically doing ecotherapy, his relationship to nature, what is Shinrin Yoku specifically, the benefits of being in nature and practicing Shinrin Yoku. Stefan shares some examples of working therapeutically with individuals in nature, why Shinrin Yoku and ecotherapy can be deep, serious work, being prepared when going out in nature, appreciating nature close to home, the importance of starting small and building up, anxiety and the woods, nature as a restorative environment, advice for people in cities, what Stefan wants you to know about nature, and much, much more. I really enjoyed this conversation with Stefan. So if you've been curious about nature and psychotherapy and you've been wanting to spend more time in nature generally, I hope this interview inspires you to spend a bit more time in nature and maybe try and get closer to it and connect with it. And without further ado, here is Stefan. On the podcast today, I have Stefan Batorijs. Stefan is an integrative psychotherapist and founder of Nature and Therapy UK. He is an associate lecturer at Plymouth University, where he teaches the role of nature and benefits of natural immersion for mental health and recovery from trauma on the clinical psychology doctorate program. Welcome to the show, Stefan.
Hi. Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And no worries. And I guess the first question is, what originally got you into working therapeutically and being a psychotherapist?
Well, back in my sort of early 30s, I started to get really bad depression. And I had a fairly idyllic kind of life, really. So it seemed. But I was getting increasingly bad bouts of depression. And the one thing that I found that really helped me was being in nature. And the thing about nature for me was it was somewhere where I could trust. It was somewhere that wouldn't trick me or lie to me. Nature was going to give it to me straight.
Yeah.
And so I began taking journeys out into nature, sleeping out in nature more and more. And it felt like the only place that I could really feel safe and that I could trust. And what emerged from that process was first the thought, I wonder if anyone else feels like this, or is it just me? And then second, the thing that followed was, I wonder if anyone else could benefit from this, not just me. And so I suddenly went from being a landscape gardener to training as a counsellor and psychotherapist. And I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So when you decided to go the counselling and psychotherapy route, you already had in mind that you were entirely going to work or largely work with nature as well as part of
Absolutely. Yeah.
that.
Yeah. In fact, the final project of my psychotherapy qualification, I took all my fellow trainees down a cave. And that was my first actual experience of using the kind of ability to access nature as a psychotherapeutic kind of medium. And so we went to the very bottom of this cave where there was a lake, and we acted out one of the underworld myths in that process. So it was a very profound experience
Yeah.
for the people, as well as me being there as the facilitator.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And did that involve any like caving where you're going through small holes, or was it quite open, the cave?
No, it was proper full-on caving.
Oh God.
Yes. Yeah, we had suits and
Yeah.
helmets and lights, and yeah, it was squeezing through
Yeah.
chambers and stuff, and yeah,
Yeah, I felt my
scary.
anxiety rise.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I find fascinating. I'm not sure I'm ever going to do, but I mean, there's also something quite mythical and metaphorical about going into that darkness and exploring it. Which, yeah,
Yeah, and interesting because the one of the underworld myths that I use a lot in my work is the myth of Inanna, and in that narrative, you have to the person has to squeeze through these tight gaps,
mm.
and as they go through each gap on their way down to the bottom of the underworld, they have their regalia stripped away from them. So their royal robes are taken away, and those royal robes are like a metaphor for the ego. So it's a process of stripping the ego away.
Yeah, yeah, like cleansing and
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. No, thank you for sharing. I guess one of my next questions was kind of what's your story with nature? Because I know it goes much earlier, and I wonder if you could just touch a bit on that.
Yeah. When I was born, we lived. I'm the oldest, so we lived in the gatehouse of a large estate that was one of Henry VIII's wives' palaces.
Mm.
And my father worked in the building, which is now a hotel. And there weren't any other children around, so I just spent all day, every day, roaming around the estate from about the age of 3.
Mm.
I would just set off on my own and spend the day wandering around. Um, of course, because I didn't know any different, I not had anything to compare it to. I thought this was just normal life.
Yeah.
So plants and animals and places became my friends.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. No.
That's kind of how it all started, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely a great experience.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
probably bonded more with nature than I did with my parents.
Yeah. And I suppose you're on a kind of a big ground, so it was relatively safe for you.
Yeah, it was a contained environment,
Mm.
and I knew my way around so well. I knew every inch of that estate. I knew in intimate detail.
Yeah.
I knew exactly where to go to find exactly the right kind of bug that I wanted to go and meet that day.
Mm.
I knew where the red ants' nests were. I knew where particular spiders were. I knew where to find the frogs and the toads.
Mm.
So it was paradise for me, really.
Yeah. Wow. Kind of reminds me of I don't know if you've seen the Durrells, the TV show. Have you
No,
got,
I haven't
is
seen it
it
yet.
Jerry Durrell? Oh, I can't remember. But he
Yeah,
created the zoo on Jersey or Guernsey, one of the
that's
two
right.
are.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fascinating kid, but it kind of reminded me of that because he's everywhere where the insects and the bugs and the birds are. He has no interest almost in people. Uh,
Yes.
he's a great character. So yeah, I guess let's get into a two-part question. One is
Yeah.
what is Shinrin Yoku, and I'm sure you'd answer this anyway. But what is the kind of the philosophy of it?
Yeah. Shinrin Yoku is a Japanese term which means forest bath or forest shower. It doesn't involve taking your clothes off. What it translates as is really a complete immersion in a forest environment. So that immersion really is to do with how we switch on our senses. So we we can kind of sense and palpate the forest environments with our skin, with our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth. Everything is kind of switched on to really be immersed in the forest and to become part of it from my side. So the philosophy really is about slowing everything down, really slowing down, and just allowing yourself to notice what is going on in the forest on that day. So slowing your breath down, slowing your walking pace down, and just taking in more of what's around you and allowing your senses, because I tend to think that our senses are all quite sort of restricted and shut down in order to function in everyday kind of urban life.
Yeah.
And so when we come out to the forest, we can say to the senses, now's your chance to really open up and take in all of your surroundings. So the philosophy is about, yes, just slowing it down and just giving yourself permission to enjoy the forest and engage with it. And I think particularly for me, although it might sound like I'm being prescriptive, for me, it's important that there isn't any dogma attached to this. So I'm not saying this is the way you have to do it. You have to slow down. You have to slow your breath down. You can go in there and just be who you want to be.
Yeah.
That's, for me, that's the purpose of it.
I like that. Yeah. There's no kind of almost rules or, yeah. Yeah, I like that. And there's something you said about slowing down. So I had an experience recently where, as you know, I recently moved to an area in England, and there's various woods. And I go to this one wood a lot because I really like it. I find it calming and quite sort of safe and secure. And like today I walked through it and I'm kind of whizzing through it. I realized I wasn't paying much attention. But the other day I sat down on a tree stump, and then after about 10 minutes, I start noticing the spider's webs between trees and the way the light hits it. And like,
yes.
I hear other sounds that I didn't notice. And then after about another 10 minutes, I suddenly see something moving down in the brush further down. And then suddenly this deer walks out, and there's not many deer in this huge woodland area. And I was speaking to someone I know in the area. He's lived there 7 years, and he's never once seen a deer in the woods there. And he goes there quite a lot. And I thought, for me, that was my second time to the woods I saw that. And it was almost felt, because I became part of the woods, I stopped and just observed that the woods kind of became alive. And
yes, yeah, that's a brilliant example. And what I say to my students is, when we move, nature is still, and when we are still, nature moves. So if we can just sit down like you did, nature will just come towards us because it's curious and wants to be friendly.
That's a good point. Yeah, true. Yeah, like I said before, anyone in America, there's mountain lions that may not want to be friendly, but definitely in the UK, the deer and badgers and other animals. Where's my next question gone? So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I guess I when I was writing a lot of these questions, I started talking about benefits and all of this, and I was like, as soon as even writing that just didn't feel right, because it started to feel like we're trying to take something from nature. But I want to ask it anyway, because I think it's useful to kind of, dare I say, sell the principle of Shinrin Yoku, or just spending time in nature generally. But yeah, what would you say some of the benefits, I guess, mentally and physically are for doing this practice?
Okay, I'll answer that in two parts. So one, I'll give you general overview of the benefits, which will then explain the other bit.
Okay.
We developed as a species in a forest environment. So the forest actually formed us. The forest created us to become part of the forest. So the way that our limbs are designed, the way that our body is designed, is to be able to move through the forest and be part of the forest. Within that development, which took place over millions of years, we breathed in the forest air and we ate the produce of the forest. And so our bodies over millions of years became very attuned to that forest environment. And now that we don't live in the forest, we are now exerting a kind of level of stress on the body because of that absence of forest. So when people talk about the benefits of being in the forest in Shinrin Yoku. They talk about how the breathing in the forest air affects the immune system. For example, what a lot of the research has gone into how breathing in the oils that trees give off from the forest improve our ability to create what are called NK cells, natural killer cells. So these are cells within the bloodstream that hunt down and destroy any damaged or infected or cancerous cells. So that improvement in our immune system enables us to track down any foreign bodies within us and eliminate them before they can cause any damage. One day in the forest gives you a boosted immune system for up to a month. So there's other benefits as well, which is to do with reduced blood pressure, to do with reducing obesity by increasing a hormone called adiponectin. There's benefits for insomnia, increasing not only just the length of sleep, but also the quality of sleep. There's benefits because being in the forest environment switches on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relax and heal part of the body, as opposed to the fight and flight part of the body, which is triggered at a chronic level. So there's lots of research gone into different ways in which the forest impacts on our health. But I want to reverse that and say most of those things that we've ended up getting wrong with us as Westerners are because we're not spending time in the forest. It's not that the forest is going to heal us. It's that we've avoided the forest and therefore we're getting these illnesses, these sicknesses. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does make sense. And thank you for setting it up. And I agree, like thinking about the UK, I'm not sure how many years ago, but at one point it would have primarily been forest land. And now it's down to, or England's down to 10% forest cover, which, yeah, when you think we've spent thousands of years, if not, as you say, millions in the forest, it's natural there may be problems as a result of removing it. It's like taking a fish out of water. Maybe not the best analogy, but the fish will struggle when you take it out of water. Yeah.
There's a theory called biophilia. And what biophilia means is that we as human beings have a natural filiation for life and living systems. So we have within us, kind of genetically encoded within us, this affinity and affiliation with the forest environment. It's part of our DNA.
Yeah, it feels, I'd say like home is the word that came to me.
Yeah, exactly. Like home.
I'm sure we'll get onto this later. And as I said to you before, sometimes the woods can trigger various fears for me, but when that's not there, I feel very connected and at peace. And it's often a place I can go to clear my head. And there's not that many places like that. So let's get on to sort of, for you specifically working therapeutically, whether that's one-to-one in the woods or whether that's in a group setting. And I guess I'll open this up. You could answer this either from a Shinrin Yoku perspective or from a general, maybe you just do traditional sort of counseling while in the woods. Just what are some of your experiences or key experiences you want to share around working therapeutically with people in nature?
Yeah, what I find is that when a person comes with an open mind, and they also come with having an intention, but also then being able to let go of that intention, that the forest environment or anywhere in nature that we're working tends to offer that person metaphors or symbols that reflect back to them the issues that they're working with. So this is where the magic comes in. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a client for quite a while, quite a few sessions. She was very close to her father, and he died. And at the funeral, her mother and her sister had a big row with her and cut off all contact. And so for 4 years, she had not had any contact with her sister, and it was to do with her father. And so we worked on this every week out in a different part of the landscape. And on one particular occasion, she was in front of me walking. We just entered into an area of woodland, and we'd crossed over a threshold space into the woods. She was in front. She went over a stile, and then I climbed over the stile behind her. And as I was getting over the stile, something made me turn round. And as I turned round, this shaft of sunlight came down through the forest and illuminated this hidden little bridge that was in the forest. I'd never seen it before in my life. And I said, hang on a minute, stop, come back. We need to go there. And she came and she saw it. She said, yes, that's the place. That's the place. So she went down there. We didn't know what was going to happen, but we knew that that was the place we had to go. When we got there, she realized that she needed to get in the stream and go under the bridge. So she took her shoes and socks off, and it was quite a tight squeeze, but she managed to kind of squirm her way under this little bridge in the stream. And she did that 3 times. And then she said, it's done. And so there was some kind of healing that took place at a very deep kind of psychic level, if you like.
Yeah.
So for me as a therapist, I don't know what's happening. I'm just working blind, and I'm just there to support her in whatever way I can. And if that means being silent, just being witness, that's what I need to do. So when we came away, the next day she was into geology. So the next day she went on a boat trip to look at the Jurassic coast, the Jurassic cliffs. Yeah. And while she's on that trip, her sister, who lived in Cyprus, who she hadn't heard from for 4 years, phoned her. So I mean, I could give you dozens of these examples of how nature works in this kind of mysterious way. Yeah. When we allow it to, when we're humble enough to just go there without structure and without dogma.
Yeah.
So there is this magical therapeutic way of working with metaphors and symbols. All we need to do is just tune into them. So we could be walking along a path with somebody, and there could be a flower or a butterfly. There could be a dead rabbit with its head pulled off. We don't know what we're going to find, but these things, when we come across them, they have a meaning and a potency to them. And then we can stop and talk. We can say, hey, look at that dead rabbit. And then it initiates a conversation. So I'm not saying to the client, hey, tell me about your problems.
Yeah. We're
working in a triad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you the client, and nature, as the triad. Yeah, no, that was a fascinating story. Thank you for sharing. And we got time. If there's one or two more you want to share, I mean, I enjoyed hearing it.
Yeah, I was working with a group of people with quite severe mental health issues, residentially, and when they arrived, the woman came rushing up to me and she said, they've taken my baby away. They've taken my baby away. And she was really traumatized and upset. And then nurses came and took her away. But it really affected me. And then 2 days later, we took the group out into the forest. And this woman was on the path ahead of me again. And as I looked up at her, she was quite a long way ahead of me. As I looked up at her, this thought went through my mind: she needs to get down in the mud. I thought, well, where did that come from? What does that mean? Anyway, we continued into the forest, had our lunch and did a little exercise. And then we walked back on a different route. And again, she was in front of me. And as I looked up, I saw her in the distance, and she sort of pretended to trip over and fell face down in this great big puddle of mud
Mm.
and was just squirming away in it and pulling it all over herself. And she was just really enjoying being in this mud until somebody came along and started saying something to her. And then she sort of stood up again. But I thought it was interesting, you know, that there was some kind of healing that took place from her needing to get down in this mud. It was almost like some kind of process of, I don't know, emancipation or of releasing some kind of tension from within her about having her baby taken away from her.
Yeah.
So again, many more of those. I was working with a woman, again, trying to sort out problems from her childhood. We came to a gate, and on the gate, they'd put one of these signs up by the forestry people, and it said, there were like pictures of flames on it, and it said, "Take care, don't start fires." And that was it. She remembered that that's exactly what she was told as a kid, was stop starting fires all over the place in the family.
Oh, wow.
And so it was, again, it was this catalyst for the conversation and for some change to take place.
Yeah.
But, you know, you, as a therapist, you have to be tuned into these things to kind of really notice them.
Yeah.
Again, I was working actually with the head of department of the psychology department. He really didn't like my work because it wasn't clinical enough.
Yeah.
And so I sent the group off. I said, right, go off 360 degrees and keep walking until you encounter something, and then come back and share it with the group. He went off and he found a sheep that had hung itself on a barbed wire fence. And he came back and he was really traumatized by this. And he wanted to go and contact the farmer. And I said, no. I said, what does that dead sheep represent to you? And he wouldn't say, but he knew that it meant death. And he actually died very shortly after that course. So he knew he was dying.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm giving you these as random examples of how nature, when we allow it to, it will reflect back to us. It won't tell us what to do, but it will give us a catalyst for us working through something, so we then feel empowered to know what we need to do. That's the beauty of the therapy for me.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and those cases. I remember you talked about that professor with the sheep, and that was actually one of my questions later on. About, you said that Shinrin Yoku, or just ecotherapy generally, can be serious work. It's not all, because at first glance sometimes Shinrin Yoku or anything else can seem quite light and fluffy, but actually there's deep work going on in these places.
Yeah, I mean, we can take it at that level. We can just go for a nice walk in the woods and feel recharged and relaxed and come back to our ordinary lives. But for me, there's a value in that, but it's also missing the opportunity to really go deeper within ourselves. I think that in our ordinary, everyday lives, we don't actually access the full potential of who we are as human beings. You know, we're quite cut off from the capacities that we have as a species and as individuals. You know, we are incredible beings, really. And we have the capacity to connect deeply with nature, to connect with each other, and to connect with the depth within ourselves. And I know that this can be contentious because it can't necessarily be measured scientifically, but I do feel that when we spend enough time in nature, we come to understand the core of who we are more and more. Yeah. Ask any gardener. And in that understanding of who we are, we then make more accurate decisions in our lives. We make decisions that support our authenticity. We make decisions that are in our benefit, not in terms of how much money am I going to earn if I do this? Or will dating this woman improve my life? It's more about what direction am I going in and what kind of person do I want to be? It's those kind of things. So yes, I think we can take Shinrin Yoku, and treat it very lightly. And a lot of the, as I may have mentioned, a lot of the websites and forums that I go on, it just tends to be pretty pictures of sunsets and trees and stuff. And nobody's really talking about the shadow side, which is very much evident in nature. And it's very much something that we can embrace and befriend.
Yeah, I like that. That's brilliant. So we were talking before the call in specifically about OCD and how some people with OCD or high levels of anxiety may come across some challenges kind of being in the woods. Is there anything you wanted to say on that?
Yeah, I think not just with OCD, but I think in general, it's good to take things at a pace that you feel comfortable with. So if going out into a forest feels too challenging or threatening, then let's start closer to home. Let's start with the plants in our house. Have we ever really looked at those plants and actually really understood the form and structure that they have? And what is it that they need in order to thrive? Because I don't know about you, but quite often houseplants have a tendency to die. So we need to understand what their needs are. And then from those houseplants, we can then start to step outside our front door. And actually, are there weeds growing in the crack in the pavement? And are there bushes on our front lawn? We can then begin to expand outwards. We don't need to go to the forest straight away. It can be sometimes too much. So we start small and build up to a place that we feel comfortable with. And also, I think the other thing is to relate what we encounter back into our own lives. So to find that link or that bridge between what we see and what's going on back at home in our lives. And if we can begin to do that, then nature then becomes more a friend and an everyday part of our kind of processes. And I'm thinking particularly now in my mind, I'm seeing raindrops. I don't know why, but that's what's coming to me is, what does it look like if we get up really close to a raindrop that's just hanging off the end of a leaf? If we look into that raindrop and we see that purity in there and that quality that water brings into our lives, that softness and fluidity, could we bring that somehow back into our own lives? And what is our relationship with water? So again, just be curious and examine these things. That's the way to do it.
I love that. Curiosity and explore. And I mean explore not on a great adventure, but just on a, as you said, on a micro level even, or or your house plants. I really like that curiosity, and also the idea of building up, because going into the great outdoors, if you haven't got much experience, could probably be very, very overwhelming initially.
I mean, I've been housebound for quite a while now, and I've noticed how when I do get the opportunity to go out to the woods, initially it feels like a really alien environment to me, because I've lost my connection with it a bit. And it doesn't take long to find it again, but initially I feel like, ooh, this is a bit scary. I don't know what's going to happen out here. So I think take it slowly, always be kind to yourself. This is something we need to learn to do, and to avoid what my daughter calls these little microaggressions against ourselves. So don't force ourselves to do anything that we don't feel comfortable with, but just be kind and be curious, as you said, and see what calls to us. Because as you know from my training, one of the things I'm very clear about is that nature itself is benign. Just because a cougar or a mountain lion might come and want to eat us, it's not doing it out of malice. It's just doing it because it's hungry.
This is nature.
This is nature. We can't hold that against the mountain lion. So in general, there is a benignity within nature. So we can connect with that.
Yeah. There's something very supportive about that benignity, about the nature isn't necessarily out of its way to get me. It's just what it is, and it's there. I guess like containing is kind of the image that comes to mind. It's
I mean, there are very, very few examples in nature of any kind of unprovoked aggression. Very few. There are very, very few animals that are just angry and unpredictable. We're the main threat.
Us and wasps.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can just give wasps a wide berth, then we're fine.
True.
I mean, creatures generally tend to leave us alone if we leave them alone. It's only if we kind of stray into their territory and they don't know who we are, and we represent a threat, that they're going to then attack us. But nature is harsh. Nature can be a harsh environment. It can seem unfriendly, but again, it's just down to our perception, and it's down to how well we're prepared for that environment. You know, if we go outside into an area that we're unfamiliar with and we're not prepared, then we can come a cropper. So again, I encourage people to start from the base and just work out slowly and develop, much like animals do actually, develop a path or a track that you use all the time. So keep following that same path and track. Just go there each week or each month. Make it a regular thing. And then each time you follow that path or track, extend it out a little bit. So there's a little bit of unknown territory to add on. And, you know, experiments have shown that rats have what are called place cells inside their brain. So when they go on these little routes, the place cells in the brain trigger off an endorphin response. So that's what we want to inculcate in people too, that we follow these regular routine paths. We know them, they're familiar to us, and they kind of enhance our well-being. And what we can also do is we can establish a place in nature that we go and visit, again, each day, each week, each month, 8 times a year. It doesn't matter, but we have this special place which we call our home in nature. And we go back and visit there, and it becomes almost like a spiritual bank account. So you go there, and when you go to a particular place in nature, a part of your energy resides there. And so when you're feeling a bit low, you can go back there and make a withdrawal of good energy.
I love that idea. That's great. Okay, so I guess one of my questions is, I guess thinking about Shinrin Yoku now, in particular in groups, and I guess you may not, or ask it about anxiety, but you may not specifically focus on, you may just focus on the individual as opposed to what they're experiencing. But are there any exercises you do in groups or one-to-one around anxiety specifically in the woods?
None that I can think of specifically. I think the way that I work is to explain it. I think I work quite cognitively with people. So the whole principle that I work with is to encourage people to become more like animals. So I encourage people to let go of those aspects of the domestication process that prevent them from being truly themselves. So when a person comes to the forest with anxiety, then if it's possible, then we will sit with the anxiety and see what's can we question that anxiety? What's really going on there? Can we have a little communication with the anxiety?
Yeah.
Or maybe we don't. Maybe we just need to sit in silence and go, yeah, I'm anxious. I'm anxious. And look, there are these trees, and look at this sunlight. And look, and there's a deer coming out. I'm anxious. You know?
Yeah.
So we can approach it in different ways. Or we can say, I'm anxious and this is too much and I want to go home. Okay, let's do that. Let's go home. We're not ready yet.
Yeah.
Let's try again next week or next month. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, the kind of kindness on that last one of this is right now, this is just too much for me, but I'll try again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had to do that on occasions with people that are they're just not ready.
Yeah.
They want to do it, but they're not yet ready in themselves. And that's absolutely fine to recognize that.
Yeah.
But I think, people do come with anxieties to the woods. And actually, one of the best things to do is to distract people. By getting them to focus on a particular simple, relaxing activity in the woods, they soon forget that they're anxious because they're just completely taken over by what they're witnessing in the woods.
Yeah.
And nature will come and help with that too. So there might be we might come across something really strange and unusual in the woods. And then we kind of have a look at that and talk about that. And then that fills up all of those spaces. So there's no room left for the anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I remember getting one message. I did like a video about nature and my experiences with it. This is 3 or 4 years ago. It's not online anymore. But I remember after I published that, I had a mum message me through Facebook, and she said that her son, I think he was really young, maybe 8, 9, did compulsions all the time.
Yeah.
And then she, after seeing the video, she took him out in nature with the family, and they were outside for 2 hours and he didn't do a single compulsion in that time.
Wow.
He just let me know that. And that's obviously just one story. I don't know if nature was the thing, but that seems to be, and the mum seemed to think that it was nature that was the difference. And I guess he was distracted, he was engaged, there was all this stimulus, it was fresh air, it was maybe calming him down. And but that always really stood out for me.
Yes. One of the things that we talk about on the psychological side is how nature is what we call a restorative environment. And so work done by 2 people in America, actually Kaplan and Kaplan, brother and sister, from the University of Michigan, they've explored what is it about these restorative environments that benefit people. And they've come up with 4 criteria for an environment to be seen as restorative. And the most important one of those is to do with what they call soft fascination. So hard fascination is where we have directed attention on a specific activity, like a video game, driving a car, trying to walk through a shopping mall. Soft fascination is where we're looking at things, but there's no need for directed attention. And what that does is it gently reprograms the brain. So it actually, the brain acknowledges that the environment is one of soft fascination, and it goes, okay, that's cool, I can look at that. And then it does lots of repair work in the background while you're just looking at the scenery.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's amazing. Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay, so yeah, I guess we've kind of answered this, but I'll ask it anyway. I guess more as a kind of more general question is, what are some tips for people listening who want to spend more time in nature and get closer to it?
I would say this is a difficult one to do, but give it a try. Let nature invite you out. So, it's about engaging and going out and meeting nature on kind of equal terms, if you like.
Yeah.
So again, as I said before, start small. So what's in your immediate environment? What can you notice about nature? What's the sky doing? What are the birds doing? What sounds can you hear around you? Focus in, if you like, focus in on the kind of micro environment. So one of the exercises I give people to do who can't get out into nature is to say, find a little area of ground, sit down, and just let your eyes focus on an area of ground about the size of a small paperback book. Just focus in on that area of ground for 10, 20 minutes and just see what happens there. What do you notice? And then gradually, over time, you begin to build up this kind of nature kind of inventory of experiences that you've had, and you become emboldened to go a bit further out because nature is inviting you, calling you out to play.
Yeah.
So again, just have that playful beginner's mind, that childlike kind of quality. Don't go out into nature like demanding some kind of awesome, kind of divine experience.
Yeah.
Just allow things to kind of come your way, and just take it slowly, and allow your intuition to guide you as well. It's like if you wake up in the morning and you get this image of a particular lake or a particular area of woodland or a hill. It's like, oh, I'll go and visit that and see what happens. That's how I tend to do it. And yeah, just really appreciate these experiences with humility.
Yeah.
And I think that nature is just such an incredible miracle, really, that I find that one of the deepest joys I get is looking out my kitchen window at the robin that sits in my hedge. And I could just sit and watch that robin all day long because I want to know, what's that robin doing? Why is that robin sat in the tree? What's it up to? And it fascinates me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can see coming through, like you're saying, that curiosity. And obviously people can't see the video, but you're beaming as you say that.
Yeah.
It's brought joy to you. I guess this question I wanted to ask, because you're someone that's grown up in nature, your career's been about nature, and you generally just love it. And maybe many people listening are in major cities around the world and don't get to be in the great outdoors as much, or obviously nature can be on a smaller scale. But I guess the question is, what is one thing you want people to know, understand, or appreciate about the natural world?
I think this question about what about people in cities has come up a lot recently, and I would be completely mortified if I thought that this was in some way a kind of elitist thing, only accessible to people in the countryside. And I think of because I used to work in London, right in the centre of the city, actually. I worked right in the stockbroker bit. And I think for me, if I was back in the city, I would cultivate that natural animal bit of me. So if you watch a fox or a badger or another animal, they go out and they go on these routes every day, every night. They go out and they're opportunists. So they go out and they wander around having a good sniff and checking things out. And so if I was in a city, that's what I would do. I would begin moving out from my home. I would begin to identify where there were little pockets of nature, little pockets of resistance to the tirade of concrete. And so I would go to those places, and so I'd have my little routine of where I wandered around, and I would again expand it out, and suddenly I would find, look, there's this little bit of waste ground here with all these amazing plants and weeds and trees growing on it that everybody's kind of ignored, and yet it's full of wildlife. So for people in the cities, you've just got to be really kind of a bit cunning like a fox and find these little pockets of nature that you can go to and let them nurture you.
Yeah.
And sorry, what was the second bit of your question?
It was just what would you want listeners or people, whoever listen to this, to know or appreciate or understand about the natural world? Kind of just to share your love for it.
I think, to be honest, Stuart, I've always had quite a sort of possessive relationship with nature. It's all because it's like it's been like my mother, and it's taken a lot for me to actually change that and want to share it with people. And I think the most important thing for me, because I've witnessed in my own lifetime, I've witnessed the loss of so many species that used to be my friends. And I think if we can just adopt a thought process that enables us to respect the reciprocity that we have with nature, to begin to see ourselves as part of nature again, part of that cycle of life, rather than somehow technologically outside of it. So that reciprocity is about coming back to nature and saying, I depend on you. I need you. And I want to look after you. And I want you to look after me. And I want to balance out that cycle. So we begin to make decisions in our lives where we think, how is this decision going to impact nature? Do I really need to use up more and more of these resources that we cannot replenish? And with the side effects of the pollution that we're causing, we're creating this imbalance. And I think, we may feel disempowered in a way to affect what's happening within the world. But on a personal level, if we can adopt this policy of reciprocity and reverence, then we can then begin to feel re-empowered again. We can go to nature and say, hey, here I am. There are so many complex issues in my life and I can't resolve them all at once, but I can come and be with nature and show some respect and reverence. And that begins a movement. That's how movements start to change.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. An important message. Okay, so very different questions now. The first one is, you can pick up the phone and call the 20-year-old Stefan. What would you tell him?
The 20-year-old?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say that on it'd be like something like, don't be such a bleep idiot.
Yeah.
But it would also be, I think I would want to just put my arm around him and reassure him, because that 20-year-old Stefan was quite wild and kind of out of control. And yeah, I mean, whenever I was in nature, I was calmed down and placated, and my kind of arousal was lessened. Around people and places, then I was always kind of on my guard. And I think that's because the animal part of me was trying to protect me, and I didn't even realize it. The animal part of me said, I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they want. I'm not sure about them. In the same way a wild animal would be very, very kind of tentative. And I think that was just my nature. And I think maybe I gave myself a hard time about that. But I think that's what I would do for my 20-year-old. I would say, hey, you're actually okay. This is just part of your kind of feral nature.
Yeah.
You haven't been particularly well socialized. So don't worry.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, good call. And then last question is, you've got a billboard. What do you want written on that billboard for everyone to see?
Love nature, love yourself.
Excellent. And then lastly, is there anything else that you wish you could have said today?
Good question. I just really want to encourage people to go out and find that connection with nature and to really examine their priorities in life. And we are at this very critical place in our lives. This is real. This is serious. We might not be here anymore. We might. What will the world be like for our grandchildren if we even get to have them? It does worry me, and we do have this responsibility right now to do things differently, and part of that might mean sacrificing some of our lifestyles and getting back to a much more simple way of being and way of connecting. So that's what I would encourage people to do, really, is to simplify their lives and find a way to reconnect with nature. I know a lot of people have very busy, hectic, full-on lives, but if we can just carve out a tiny bit of time, even if it's only a minute, to look out of the window at the stars, that's all we need to do, and build it from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, great way to end. Well, look, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your expertise. It's been a pleasure for me to talk to you.
Oh, thank you, Stuart. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
So there you have it. Thank you so much to Stefan for his time. I really appreciate it. And of course, to you guys, as always, for listening. It means a lot. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.